If you've been looking to upgrade your sewing machine, then the Brother F420 will not have escaped your notice. In fact, The Independent, which is a large newspaper, a broadsheet newspaper here in the UK, has voted it its best buy back in 2021. And in fact, the Brother machines still top their list of the best sewing machines. But what's it actually like to sew with? And that's what I'm going to cover in this video. Is it good for sewing? Is it good for quilting? Who am I? I am Kim. This is Quilt with Kim. You are very, very welcome. Let's have a look at this machine then. I think the first thing for me is that the Brother F420 looks nice. Now, I'm a kind of girl that likes smooth, curvy lines on her machines. Everybody is different. That may not be for you, but I think this is a nice looking machine to start with. That may or may not be of any importance to you. It is to me. If it is for you, this is a nice looking machine. Now, functionally, it has got a carry handle, as you would expect. It's got a proper handle. It's not just like a little hand slot that you get with some machines. It has also got a hard case, which I think is really important to protect machines from dust and from bangs and knocks, especially when you're traveling. That brings me nicely on to the second thing, is this heavy? Because if you're going to classes and workshops, you don't want to be lumbering around a really heavy machine. And I think this machine is probably at the top of where you'd want to go for portability. It definitely is. It is a heavy machine. It's not going to jump around all over your sewing table when you're sewing, but it is portable. You can carry it, and it does fit in very nicely behind the driver's seat of the car. And of course, you've got that hard case, which will protect it. When we take the hard case off, we can have a look inside, and you can see we've got a whole bunch of feet here, and it actually all the ones that you would expect. So your buttonhole and your blind hem foot and your button foot and so on. So they're all in there. You also get a wide open toe foot for your decorative stitches, and that goes up to 7 mils. So that gives you some versatility when you are looking decoratively. So you've got your tray with your foot in, but it's also got a little holder underneath where you can put your sweets, your mini bottles of wine, or your spool caps, or whatever you like in their spare feet and so on. So that's all the feet. Let's have a look at the LCD display. When we look at the panel on the machine, this is where everything is set. We start with a very clear LCD display, and we can see on here just at the top of the screen there, we've got our stitch selector section. More on that in a moment. It tells us which foot that we need to put on. So this currently says I need a J foot for the stitch that we're doing, which is a straight stitch. It tells you your stitch width and your stitch length. The default for each stitch is in a little box. If I change them, you can see the little box disappears. So if you're in any doubt, just scroll up and down until you get that little black box. Over here, you've got a couple of images in the display to tell me that the hearts are on, so that I haven't got a repeating pattern at the moment. I will tell you about that in a second. And then that little needle that sort of comes through the line there, which shows the fabric, shows that my needle is set in the needle down function. If you haven't had that before, perhaps you're upgrading to this machine, it's a really useful feature to have, so that you can set it so that when you stop, your needle is always in the down position. Very useful when you need to turn corners or you're pivoting or whatever. So that is there. Just below that, we've got the buttons that we can change the stitch width either up or down. We've got the stitch length, and then these buttons here, they change settings. So when I show you the settings in a moment, it's these buttons that will scroll up and down through settings. On the panel here, you can tell that I've got little blue lights depending on what I've got switched on, and as I press these, the blue light will go through. Didn't like that very much. The blue light will scroll through. Now, it's got in the center panel where the numbers are, the numerical keys, it's got the most common utility stitches already saved in these buttons here. So if I pressed that, so that's where it defaults to when you turn the machine on. It's currently on number 1 for a straight stitch, but I can press any of these. Let's press number 6, and you will see that that changes in the LCD panel, and it says I've got a zigzag stitch going on, and if I want to change the stitch length or stitch width for those, I can do. This little button here has got even more utility stitches. I will show you that as I get to the stitch selections, but all I would do is I would press it and then I would select a stitch pattern that I have chosen from my selection panel. We've got more decorative stitches here under that little leaf button, and then we've got a whole bunch of letters as well. So we've got, with this machine, we've got 140 stitches that you can play with. You've got 10 buttonhole stitches to cover all variety of buttonholes, and you have got 5 different lettering variations from just normal letters to Japanese, should you so desire. So this little column of buttons on the panel here is a really useful set of features. This particular button here is a manual save button. So on my machine, I've got this set up so that when I switch the machine on, it is always ready for piecing with a 1/4 inch seam allowance set and a 1.8 stitch length that I use for piecing, but the choice is yours. You can do that for any stitch. So that's that one. This little button here means you can reset back to where the stitch is supposed to be, the basic settings or the manufacturer's settings. So that allows you to go back and undo things. This little button here is very useful. So when you are changing the needle, and you know what it's like, you can, when you're fiddling about changing the needle, you can knock other buttons, and these are really easy just to knock a button and things change. That allows you, if I press that, when you press the footage down, you'll get this symbol appearing on the screen. Let me just angle that up a little bit so you can see. So that locks everything else down so you won't knock everything when you're changing your needle. And then when you put your needle in, you can switch that back off again and you're good to sew. This little button down at the bottom here allows you to save patterns. So if you've got your favourite pattern, so say you've got a couple of little stars and it says made by Kim, don't choose that name because that's my name, made by Kim with a couple of little stars, and you've created that as a pattern, which you can do on here. You can save that to your patterns here, and then you can recall it again for next time. It saves you having to reprogram it in all over again. So a really useful set of functions there. Then these little buttons here, I will show you exactly what those are because I love them. This one is an automatic lock stitch, and this one is an automatic cutter. So when you are sewing, you can set these to automatically lock your stitch at the beginning and end of your stitch line, and you can automatically cut it as well. I will show that to you in just a moment. So this little button here is a menu of settings, and as you go through, you can see that we can change things like the needle. So if you want your needle to always default to the down position when you finish sewing or when you've stopped sewing, then that's where you do that. You can change it for twin needle, and as I go through, there's all sorts of places you can adjust your needle to be over on the left or the right or whatever, in the middle. You can change your density of your thread, how long or how tall your decorative stitches are, how far apart your letters are. We've got sizes. We can mirror image as well. So if you have a pattern that you want to mirror, then you can click that on there. The single or the repeat. So if you've got a pattern and say like your star made by Kim star, you can set it up here to repeat that pattern, and you could have a whole series of that if you want to. I'm not sure why you'd want that with made by Kim in the middle, but if you come up with some decorative version, you can set it up here so it will just repeat that pattern for you. The foot pressure is a good one here. So on some machines you have a little dial where you can adjust your foot pressure. On here, it's in here. So 3 is for default foot pressure, the maximum foot pressure that you can get, but we can change that to a number 1 for light fabric. So that's there for you. Then on the next setting here, we've got the buzzer. It's less a buzzer, more of a ting. So you can hear as I'm moving through, there are tinging sounds as I press, I don't know what to call it, as I press the buttons. Let's just see if I can, that's menu 6. If I shut up a minute, can you hear the pinging sounds. If I don't want that, I can turn that off, and then you can't hear anything anymore. So let me just put it back on. It's a useful thing to have switched on because it will tell you if something is wrong. So you'll get a little fast repeated beeping sound. That's the word, isn't it? Beeping. A little fast beeping sound if something is wrong, and it will tell you whether your foot isn't down or just something is going on in the machine. It will tell you. You've got the option of turning the light on or off depending on how you want to sew, and then you can adjust the brightness of your machine. Then we've got the reinforcement priority. So when you're doing a lock stitch, what normally happens is that it locks at the beginning of a stitch line and then the end of the stitch line. So you can toggle this on or off to decide whether you want the priority to be just the beginning of the stitch line or at both ends. So you can have a little play with that. And then the input sensitivity is how much you need to press to make the buttons work, essentially. So that's just defaulted to 3. And of course you can change the language. I'm going to just keep it on English if that's okay with you, but you can change the languages if you want to. And then on the final page, it just tells you what version we have got. If you need to go back to the beginning again, this little back button, the C button here, will just take you back to the initial screen so you can start all over. The OK button is if you're wanting to save things, and just like on a computer, you need to press OK sometimes to save something. So that is your little panel there. There's a whole world of functions in here that you can play with. It is worth sitting down and reading your manual and working through them all. This is just a whistle stop to show you what's in this machine, because it opens up a whole world of possibilities for you. I'm not trying to teach you how to use it, more just to show you what the functionality is so that you know what you're getting with this machine. But there's a good amount sitting in this panel here. So over on the front of the machine, we have got a speed dial here, or slider, so that you can go very slow or speedily should you so desire. We've got a automatic cutter, or an automatic cutter there. We've got our needle up, needle down function. That's not the same as setting it so that it always goes in the down position, but when you want to lower and raise your needle, that is the button for that. I'll show you all these in a second. Over here we've got a reinforcement stitch, so if you want to stitch on the spot, that's what that one does to reinforce a stitch. We've got our reverse stitch there, which means we can hold that down. If you just press it once, it will do one reverse stitch. If you hold it down, it will do reverse stitching until you take your finger off. And then you've got a start and your stop button here, so that also tells you whether it's ready to go. So green means that we're ready to sew, because as you can see, the presser foot is down here. It's not threaded up, but the green says it's ready to go. But if you've got a red light, we're not ready to go. So if I lift the presser foot, you can see how that changes to red. And then if we're doing something and it's not happy, it will turn to orange. The throat space, what we're looking about in here is we've got a good sort of 7 inches of space in here to the needle, and you've got about, it's just under 5 inches going up that way, so it's a little bit under, so about 4.5 inches. I've quilted quilts in here both with a walking foot and free motion, and I've got enough space in here to work with the both. Yes, you can get bigger throat spaces, but this definitely handles a full size quilt. The other thing to mention whilst we're lurking in this bit is the light. I know we talked about in the LCD display that you could, LCD or LED, anyway, in the display, we could have the light on or off, but in here, the light is on, but it is a really bright light, and we've got multiple lights going over the whole area. And I think if you're only used to one little light over the needle, when you move to this machine, you find all this bright light, it is really a good thing to have. Threading the F420 is really easy. So threading is the normal way on your top spool, but when we get to threading the needle, if that has been the bane of your life because you've got one of those automatic needle threaders where you pull something down and then you have to manhandle the thread through, think again with this one. So what we would do is we've brought the thread down. It's behind the little needle, the thread guide bar at the top of the needle, and then I'm just going to pop it up in between this little section here. You can see it says number 7 at the top here. There is a little metal bit here where I'm just going to catch that thread in and then sit it in this little clip here. There is a cutter on the side of the machine as well, and then there is a lever just on the left. I'm going to move my camera so it's going to get a bit wobbly for a second so I can show you. So just bear with me as I move the camera around. Can you see here? What I would do is I would click that down. There's the automatic cutter. That's not an automatic cutter. It's just a little cutter on the side. As I click this down, I will show you what happens. Let me put my camera back. I've just put a bit of calico there so that you can see. I had to stop recording just for a second because I realised that you would not be able to see. So as I click that little lever down, watch what happens. So the thread has come through that little metal bit there, and then the number 7 section here. And as I click it down, it automatically threads that needle. Can you see there? And then all I would do is knock the camera flying and I would pull that thread out, which I can't do because the camera is in the way, but it is really very easy. I literally just can't get at it because the camera's in the way. So I'll sort that out in a minute. The other thing is got a drop-in bobbin, so let me show you that. So all we would do obviously is take the little lid off. We would get the bobbin, always with the thread coming out from the back to the left, drop it in, wind it round that little banana shape. There's a little cutter in there that we could take off, and we'll put the lid back on, and that is your bobbin in place, ready to sew. You do not need to pull the thread up. You're good to go from there. What about the sewing then? Now let's start with that automatic cutter and automatic threader that I spoke about a bit earlier. So when we have the buttons over here on the right, we need to press these buttons while the presser foot is in the raised position before we do anything else. So if I just pressed the automatic lock stitch or reinforcement stitch button there, that would automatically lock stitch at the beginning and the end of my stitch line. I will show you this in just one second. And then the cutter, if I press that again, then that would cut it at the end of the stitch line. So I can have the reinforcement stitch without the cutter, but I can't have the cutter without the reinforcement stitch. Either way, whichever you press, remember that you need to have the presser foot raised before you press these buttons, because if you press them when your presser foot is down, nothing will happen. So let's just switch over to underneath the presser foot and I'll show you what happens now those two are pressed. So I'm just on a normal stitch, there's nothing fancy about the stitching. So I've got that in position. I'm going to press that little needle down function button that is up here. So press that down. And then we're ready to sew. So as I sew and as I start off, you will see that it does this automatic reinforcement stitch. Can you see it came forward, went back, came forward. And as I come forward, let's just do a few stitches. And now I've finished my stitch line. What I would do is press the reverse button just once. So that's here. That one there, and as I press it, I'll show you what happens to the stitching or the reinforcements. Okay, so I'm stepping right back. My foot isn't on the foot pedal and my hands aren't touching anything. So that does that automatically. And as you could hear right at the end, above my talking, it actually cut it. So if I lift the presser foot, that has cut the thread for you as well. You can see the reinforcement stitches at the beginning and the end. I can use the cutter on its own, so I'm just going to switch up that little cutter symbol over on that LCD panel. So if I wanted to, so what I've got now is that reinforcement auto stitch button over on the right switched on automatically. So I'm going to put my needle down again. I'm going to sew a few stitches, so we'll end up with that reinforcement at the beginning and end. So we go forwards, backwards, forwards. I need to press that little reverse button to go backwards. Again, I haven't got any hands The machine's on its own now. And now that hasn't cut, so let me just show you a minute. So if I raise my needle and then raise my presser foot, we would have to cut the thread. So I am going to put that over that little cutter. Let me do one more stitch line to show you. Okay, it's final reinforcement stitch. Okay, now if I press that little cutting button just there, it cuts the thread automatically for you. So if I lift that presser foot up, it's cut it. What I will say, the only tiny little downside for that is that every time it cuts, there's a little teeny bit of thread that collects underneath the needle plate. So when you are cleaning out your machine, there's a little section under here where the cutter is that you'll want to get in with your brush and really give that a good clean, probably more regularly than you think that you might. So that's probably the only slight negative to that. But honestly, you've got to clean out your machine anyway. Just remember to do that bit there. When your cutter, if you find it stops working, is because you've got all those little tiny little bits of thread caught up in the cutter underneath your needle plate. But it's a very simple fix. Just give it a clean and you're good to go again. Your stitch selection is all stuck on the inside of the lid here on the top, which I think is really useful because a lot of machines have a separate clip-on section that has the stitch selection on, and I'm forever putting that somewhere and losing it. So I think this is a better alternative. As I said, on the main panel, you've got the main utility stitches, the ones that we'll go to over and over again. They are pre-selected with numbers, but if you wanted to change to any of the other utility stitches, you can see here you've got a little box, this one here for this selection, and then you can just see to the right of the screen there are more decorative patterns. I'll show you some more of these in a moment. But what I would do is I would change the button on the panel. I am going to show you this in one sec, so just hold fire. But you can see I would press that button and then I would choose the number of the stitch that I want. So I'm just going to select number 7 here, which is actually a basting stitch, which is really useful when you are basting. You can baste by your machine, just have the longest stitch length. So what I would do is press that button and then press 07. So let me just switch over to the panel to show you. So here, so you can see on the panel we've got the most commonly used utility stitches, but if we want number 7, I would click that corresponding little button there, and then I would select 07 because that is what the stitch number is. And you can see that the display here changes to a longer straight stitch. It tells me that's the stitch number there, number 7. It tells me that's the little stitch selection area that I am in, and it tells me what foot that I need. It tells me my needle position, that's the stitch width. It is also the needle position, as you probably know. And then over here it says this is a nice long stitch. So let's just see what happens when I sew that. Okay, so press the needle and off I go. And you can see already that's a much longer stitch. I'm just going to finish that. I've just put the auto cutter back on because I'm quite addicted to it. And you may or may not be able to see, but that is a much longer stitch length. That's probably a bit difficult for you to see on camera. Take my word for it that that is a longer stitch length. So let's have a quick look at the other decorative stitches. I'm not going to run through them. You can have some fun playing with those, but just to show you what you've got. I apologise in advance if this gets a little bit wobbly on the camera because I have to move it along and it will wobble, but you can see we've got a bunch of pretty decorative stitches here. So that's a little leaf button with number 1. So if I wanted, I don't know, that, what's that, Greek key, I think it's called, I would press that leaf number 1 and then number 13 to get the Greek key. And then in this little panel, we've got the leaf 2, and we've got all sorts of varying shapes. You remember back in the settings, we could elongate or adjust the thread density. These are the stitches you'd probably want to adjust those on. So they are all in there. And then we've got even more. With our leaf pattern 3, there's some more stitches over there, keeps going. And then just above that, you can see, let's just move that up a little bit. You can see that we have got all the letters, and you've got standard lettering. In fact, it's probably better there. You've got standard lettering, italics, a little sort of echo shape, Cyrillic, and I think that's Japanese, weirdly. But then Brother is made in Japan, so that's probably why. I did, of course, forget to tell you about this little chap here, which is a very cute crocodile stitch, because who does not need a crocodile stitch in their decorative stitching? Of course you do. But seriously, what about free motion quilting? Because that's important as well. When you're looking at the mid-range machines, you're obviously going to start opening up the possibilities for your quilting. Free motion, there is a switch on the back of the machine that you would click over to drop your feed dogs, as you might expect. And then free motion, it handles it beautifully. You may find that you need to adjust the tension slightly, but that depends on the needle that you're using and the thread that you are using. But this is the machine that I learned free motion on, and it is a beautiful machine and handles free motion beautifully. When you buy the F420, you quite often have the option to have a quilting kit that is a bundle together with it, especially if it's a show promotional offer. I would take them up on that if that is thrown into the price or there's a bundle price, because what you get is a really good extension table that you can clip onto the end. That really helps you out. You've also got a knee lift. If you've ever wondered what this is, that's exactly what it is a knee lift. So you pop that into the hole that's on the front of your machine. And then as you're sewing and you stop, you can use your knee to lift up this, and it lifts up your presser foot, so you can keep your hands engaged on your fabric or on your quilt whilst you are turning the quilt. So that's good. And the quilting kit also comes with a walking foot, a 1/4 inch foot, and a free motion foot. All are useful. However, I would say that you won't necessarily need the 1/4 inch foot. It's a personal choice, but when you put your stitch width to 5.5 on this machine, it sews a perfect 1/4 inch just with your normal foot on. So I have never used a 1/4 inch piecing foot with this machine, and I've had perfectly accurate 1/4 inch seams. Would I recommend the Brother F420? Well, yes, without any shadow of a doubt and hand on the heart, this is a machine that I would recommend, and I do over and over again, for anybody who has got through that beginner stage, has had that basic mechanical entry-level machine, and is now ready to get into that mid-range level of machines, taking that step up because they're ready to grow their skills and develop in the world of sewing. When you start learning to sew, you have those entry-level machines because you're not really sure which direction to go in. You're not sure whether to invest in a machine or not. You don't know whether you're going to take to sewing. You don't know which direction of sewing you're going to go in, because there's all these different directions. And I think that really is a decision that you've got to make as you're learning to sew. But there's a point at which you're saying, okay, I'm now really into my dressmaking, so I might want to go that one. I just want to make jeans and dungarees, so I might want a heavyweight, heavy duty machine. But if I'm going into a whole variety of things, like I make dresses, if I do dressmaking, if I'm making bags, if I'm doing patchwork and quilting, then this machine will do you proud. Obviously, this is a quilting channel, so I'm going to look at it through the lens of being a quilter, and I can tell you for patchwork and quilting, this is definitely the machine that I would recommend. I started with a basic mechanical machine. When that finally gave out the ghost, this is the machine that I went to next, and I have never regretted that decision. I think if you're scared about all the functionality it comes with, don't be. It's really easy to use, and you don't need to know all these buttons all in advance. Just get the basics right. Know how to set your stitches, know how to do your auto lock stitch, your auto cutter, both of which I love. Learn how to use that advanced one-click threader. Is really very easy, and then you're pretty much good to go. And then as you learn new skills, you'll find that it's got all these functions there that will grow with you for the next 3 to 5 years and beyond, depending on what you want it to do. It is an investment. It's a mid-range investment, so at the time of recording, so it's February 2025, depending on when you're watching this, it's about £700. I suspect that's about the same in the US, equivalent of. So it is an investment. It's not a cheap whizzing out on Saturday morning just to pocket it along with your groceries. So it's a considered purchase, but I think it's a considered purchase that will do you very well for a whole number of years to come. But what about you then? Because I've given you my review on this machine and I love this machine and I would very happily recommend it, but you have got to spend a lot of time with your machine. So what I would like you to do is not just take my word for it. I would like you to go and book some time in the local dealers with all the mid-range machines. Go and try them out. If you have tried them out, there will be one that stands out that you love and that you're going to get on with. I think it's like a marriage, because you need to get on with that person and be happy with the things that they don't have, because you know that the things they do have are exactly what you're looking for. So do go and try out machines and find out which is the best one for you, but I would hand on heart recommend the F420. If this has helped, please don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you've also been considering the A150, you might want to check out this video here. But I will love you and leave you for now, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.